Happy Telecast Tuesday. It's Dan
And Dan or
here
Hajun.
on Tuesday Telecast. Atlas Lemsko. How you doing, buddy?
Doing all right? Yeah,
Feeling good?
feeling good.
Still jet lagged?
A little, not as much,
Actually,
not
I'm
as
feeling
much.
pretty good too.
Yeah, I am waking up at like 5 a.m., but whatever.
Well, if you were in New York City for Build Expo last week and you saw us, drop a like or a comment.
Mhm.
Give us an N for NYC.
Mhm. Mhm.
Give us a B for Build. Give us a H for Hajun. Hope everybody out there is having a wonderful Tuesday, no matter where you are in the world. I know it's a crazy time.
Mhm. Mhm.
We have a really cool class from Art Center College of Design here in the building, getting a tour.
Mhm.
Really wonderful folks. Emmett Sutherland, shout out. Shout out to Art Center College of Design and Cine Tech 1. That's the class here. And we're going to be doing a really nice Wednesday tomorrow. Am I right? I mean,
I
Wednesday
think
in New
so.
York last week was pretty sick.
Yep.
Big shout out and big thank you to the folks from Pixboom. I give it 5 big booms. How many booms would you give it?
At least 4.
4 booms.
Mhm.
No, I'll take it. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
At least. Unconfirmed.
Well, if you don't know, Pixboom is a new high-speed camera capable of 4K at 1,000 frames a second with high dynamic range, global shutter, backside illuminated sensor. I know I do better when my backside is illuminated. How about you?
I
Don't
like
ask.
I like when we did the experimental slow motion videos with like me getting punched in the face with like a flashlight like in my hand. It's like flare slow mo. That was cool.
Also, a big shout out to Tommy Shaw and Marcus Graham, who did the bagel challenge with us.
Oh yeah.
We did a bagel shredding situation with the Pixboom folks. You can find those clips on our Instagram.
Mhm.
We
Mhm.
also did Smell-O-Vision, so be on the lookout
Oh
on
yeah.
our YouTube and our Instagram for a little Atlas Smell-O-Vision release video.
That was an interesting one.
Facts. We did not invent Smell-O-Vision, but we brought it back.
Yeah.
I can go on a deep dive on that, but I think I'll spare you all today. Smell-O-Vision, it's experiential smell technology for
Mhm. Mhm.
motion picture. So yeah, what were some of your highlights from Build? I mean, I know for me, I did not go very far from the booth, but one of my top highlights was walking down, I believe it was 37th, and seeing
Mhm.
a horse apartment.
The horse apartment was crazy. Yeah, I didn't. So like Dan was joking about how like we saw this building in the middle of nowhere and we saw horses like on the street and I was like, huh. I think he said something along the lines of like, I wonder if the horses stay in this building. And then we looked closer at the windows, and there were actually horses in the windows, like in the multiple stories of different of the different floors. And we were like, oh my god, it's totally a horse apartment. And we were like we were like asking questions of how do the horses get up there, like do they have horse stairs or do they have like a horse elevator,
They're on like
what
a
the
fifth
hell.
floor horse walk-up.
Yeah, it was like so curious. And then the illusion was broken when the doors were left open one day and we got to see inside. It's just a ramp, not very
I mean, that's horse stairs as far
horse.
as I'm
I mean
concerned.
there are, I guess there are horse stairs.
What is a ramp but horse stairs?
True.
Chat,
We didn't invent
let us know.
stairs. The horses already did. We just copied them. Just called it
Well,
a ramp.
I asked the horses if the apartment was rent controlled, and they told me that it's stable. And fun fact, the Honora location, the club in Honora that features prominently called Headquarters, is
Oh
literally
yeah, you saw
next
that.
door. I mean, you saw it too. It's literally next door to the horse apartment. And the only reason I found that out is that, like, every day that we were walking to Build Expo from our hotel, shout out Pistana CR7. What a nice hotel.
Hmm.
If you're looking to sponsor us, I would not mind having a hotel sponsor because that was pretty comfy. One of the best showers I've ever
And
had.
shout out Jonathan who gave me a couch because I just kind of jammed myself into this New York trip, and I felt bad, so I just asked my asked my friend for a couch, and that was awesome too. Hell yeah, thank you, Jonathan.
Next time, sponsor us, Pestana. But thank you,
True.
Jonathan.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I think Hajin and I should get like a penthouse apartment next time from Pestana because it was
Mm.
pretty nice. And
Mm.
also, why not?
True.
But yeah, we were walking every day past the horse apartments, and I was like, wait a minute. That building says headquarters, and headquarters is the name of the club in Honora. So, no spoilers. Go see Honora if you haven't seen it. 5-time Oscar winner. Shout out Drew Daniels. Shout out Sean
Honora Sweep.
Baker. Honora sweep. Honora supremacy for the Oscars 2025. But yeah, check it out. Like, we were just walking past the horse apartment every day, and then we're like, yo, that is literally the Honora location, and it happens to be next to the horse apartments. So shout out horse apartments. Every day in New York, you never know what you're going to see. It's a magical place. Thank you, New Yorkers, for being cool, kind, magical, and thank you, New York City, for just being a treasure trove of unusual and unexpected surprises every day.
Yeah, because I kept seeing the building, but I didn't realize it was that like exact one. Or I don't know, but that was cool that you got to actually notice and like cross confirm kind of. So that was cool.
Yeah, I Googled that, and it turns out straight facts.
Speaking
So,
of cross confirm, Andor, that was kind of cool.
oh yeah, let the chat know what's up with
So
that.
so we Dan let the team know that Andor was using our Mercury series for the new season 2, and nobody really we didn't really think much of it until Joe from our team found the exact behind the scenes image of when exactly our lenses were used for the cockpit scene of of him flying the fighter thing. I didn't get to be clear. I didn't get to watch season 2 yet, so I don't know exactly know what that scene is.
Spoiler
But
alert:
it's a spoiler free.
there's a spaceship
Oh my god, no,
with lasers.
no!
Some
I wanted to
space
find that
stuff
for
happens.
myself. No, no, but it was cool that that exact behind the scenes image of the lenses being it was like a multi-cam setup, and there was out of 5 or 6 cameras, whatever, however amount of cameras, 3 of them just had Mercury
Visible.
different focal lengths of 36, 42, 72. That was like, whoa.
It's pretty sweet.
So we made it to Star Wars. Let's go. That was a cool moment
I
as
mean,
well.
it's a big circle because like part of the reason we started this company is movies like Star Wars. So it's great to, know that some of the art forms and you know stuff that's been an inspiration is now continued and continues to use stuff that was stuff we make. So that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
So yeah, today, we have a pretty light stream here, but chat, if you have any questions, we will take them. But we're actually going to go into a live stream with Mark Mervis and B from last year, and it's a really great live stream. Covers a lot of topics. One of the key topics, it's still Pride Month. Mark Mervis was a cinematographer on an iconic movie of queer cinema, Billy's first Hollywood screen kiss. If you haven't seen the movie, check it out. It's an incredible film. Mark is an incredible person, great friend, and we believe in uplifting all people here, all types of humanity, and telling great stories, having fun, and sharing that experience. So, shout out Mark. Shout out B for a great stream today. B's running our technical operations on the stream, so big thank you, B. And guess what? We're on an Alexa Mini LF right now with a Sirius Series 28 millimeter with a special coating. Look at that. It's loco.
Look how serious that looks. Oh my. Crazy.
Very, very serious.
Oh, yeah,
very
thank you.
serious.
Wow.
So if you're not aware, go on our YouTube channel, type in Sirius, Sirius, watch all of the Sirius related clips, and drop in the comments what you think of those clips. It's definitely worth seeing. I will not explain further. Leave it up to you to see and tell us what you see.
Yeah.
But chat, if you have any questions, drop them. Otherwise, we're going to jump right into the stream with B and Mark Mervis right here on the Atlas Lens Co. Instagram and YouTube channel. Tomorrow, Wednesday, every Wednesday, 10:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Our next big event is going to be EuroLens Expo in London, UK, with CVP, the folks from Kerner Camera, all of the camera people out there, all the lens manufacturers, all the homies. You know what to do. come on out. If you're in Europe or the UK, what are you waiting for? Euro Lens Summit, you're going to want to see it. Otherwise, come down to a Wednesday here in LA, and two's in every Tuesday for Tuesday telecast.
Tuesday telecast.
Facts.
Let's just jump right into it.
All right. Bing bong. If you have any questions, we'll look for them. Any questions in the chat, B? Nope, no questions. All right, let's jam.
Just jump
Drop-
right into it.
Drop that stream.
Let's just jump right.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Tuesday telecast. My name is B, and today I'm here with cinematographer Mark Mervis. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So today, I think we're going to talk a little bit about the history of queer cinema. I think we're both queer cinematographers. I think that's a fair assessment.
Yeah, that would be very fair.
And yeah, I think we're going to talk a little bit about movies that we both love, maybe some stuff that you've worked on, and then whatever else comes up.
Super.
Awesome. So how did you kind of get your start working as a cinematographer? What kind of queer movies have you worked on in the past?
Well, my first movie that I got to do was a queer movie. It was, in fact, it was the last. Actually, it was the first gay movie shot in anamorphic Panavision.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a movie called Billy's Hollywood Screen Kiss.
Okay.
It had a really low budget. It was like $400,000, and it ended up going to Sundance and dramatic competition, and it sold. And yeah,
Amazing.
it was like, sort of like a your sort of fantasy, kind of thing where you just like let's get some money together, let's make a movie, and all that kind of thing.
That's really exciting.
It was super exciting, and I just thought at the time like, oh, you just make a movie and it goes to Sundance, and that's how it goes. I had no,
Yeah.
No
Then
idea.
every follow-up is like, why isn't it going to Sundance?
Exactly. For sure.
Wow. Yeah. So what was that like? Like, how'd you get attached to that project? What was the process like for you?
Well, I had been starving to death having my own production company back in Virginia, and I decided I wanted to move out to LA and give it a shot, and I came out. And I met some people. I met like Marcus Hugh at Strand Releasing, and they put me onto some people who had a project in development, but they had no money. So I went back to work in Virginia for a year. Those people got their money together, and we made the movie.
Amazing.
And it was one of those. It was pretty cool. It was Sean Hayes, who was in Will and Grace. That was sort of got his start
I
with
was
that.
reading a little bit before the stream here, and it sounds like that was his last project before Will and Grace.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
That's kind of a big break.
Yeah, it was. It turned out well from the film too. It was a lot of fun. He was really nice.
Awesome. Yeah. So once you're actually, on set working, was this like your first big feature?
Oh yeah. I mean, it was my first real. I did a movie for Guar.
Okay.
I did Skullhead Face for Guar, which barely counts as a feature. I think it was like
Sure.
64 minutes long or something like that.
That's in the range. Yeah.
And we shot that on like giant BNC Mitchells, BNCR
Ooh,
Mitchells,
oh, yeah.
with Agfa 320, which was the stock, and we got the film stock from like Last of the Mohicans, had their short ends.
Wow.
Oh,
Just
and it
like
was
barely getting it done.
barely getting. It was so hot and miserable. It was so gross. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it like kind of switching over to this was it like just as scrappy, or were you kind of more prepared going into it?
You mean Billy's?
Yeah.
It was mainly getting to pay for the FedExing of all the equipment.
Uh-huh.
And Panavision was super generous, and so it was one of those things. We had like a bunch of like it's a long story, but there was a bunch of like busted lenses that we ended up having.
Oh, yeah.
That we were able to sort of kludge them back together again. And like I said, Panavision was super nice about it. And yeah, it was. Now I look at it and I look at the photography and I kind of look at it and go like, why wasn't I more brave? Because the way that looked was so stylish and everything. And I watched a 4K version of it. I hadn't seen it in like 20 years.
Wow.
And it
yeah.
was like on demand for some reason, and it was there. And I watched it, and I didn't supervise the color or anything, for the high def,
Sure.
or whatever it was, 4K. And it looked so good, and it was so sort of styly, And I think like since then I kind of like pulled back on that. Kind of sort of afraid
Sure.
to be that bold.
Just like earlier in your career, you
Yeah.
felt safer kind of gambling with it.
Later in my career, felt needing to be safer, to
Right.
be more
Right.
commercial or be more, appealing to more
Interesting.
people. Yeah.
It's kind of an interesting evolution to I feel like I've also heard the opposite from some cinematographers where maybe they feel more comfortable further into their career. But I guess it kind of makes sense that for a movie like this, especially, where it's just kind of, what's the word I'm looking for here? I think it may be more adventurous. Is that a fair assessment?
I think there was. Yeah, I think there's a lot more. Yeah, I'm blanking out, but yeah.
Yeah. So, how do you get Panavision lenses on a movie like this? What was that process like?
Ooh, it's like one of those deals I could tell you, but then they would seriously, like people from would come and I would have
I
no
hear
more
that
life.
about Panavision so often.
Yeah, you know, like I said, it's you know, the cool thing about some of those old Panavision lenses, you know, what makes them look the way that they do, and I think a lot of things that people don't think about in lenses in general is part of it is that powerful retrofocus design where you have to maintain a huge gap between the rear of the lens and the film plane because there's a shutter in there.
Of course, yeah.
And so when you design lenses without maintaining that air gap and sort of forcing yourself to design a lens that way, you know, it sort of affects what it looks like, you know, more or less. But yeah, but Panavision, like, a lot of their older lenses also, like minimum focus is like 4.5 feet, 5 feet. Not very useful. It's like the Atlas lenses, you know, they all minimum focus really well, you know, down to like 2 feet. It just makes them eminently more usable compared to the older, you know, modern Panavision lenses, of course, do all that stuff. But,
Of course, yeah.
you know, the old school ones that everybody likes,
Of
they're really hard to use.
I mean, so many anamorphics are tricky to use, especially without diopters.
And with film cameras with spinning mirrors, you can't see focus that well, so it's really hard to see
Right.
if like somebody is, you know, on the same plane, and so you're kind of forcing yourself sometimes to put both actors like on exactly the same plane because it just kind of looks soft or odd to have like one person in focus and one person out of focus, and it's hard to see, you know, especially when the spinning mirror is running in the film days. So certain things you
Definitely,
wouldn't
yeah.
risk, you know, in the film days because the depth of field might be so shallow that something could be buzzed and you won't see it. The operator won't see it in the viewfinder because the mirror's spinning and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
And that's something that has changed in your workflow since the onset of digital then.
Oh yes, for sure. Yeah. I mean, digital's, you know, I love film and I love the process of it, but I don't think it's better than digital.
Right. It's different, maybe.
Different, yeah. I think it's different. It's got its own advantages. You know, I'm in love with the sort of the mechanical, the sense that like you're in the world with it. You know, film is like it's a thing. You know, it's like taking a vinyl record and dropping the stylus and then turning the amplifier off. You can still hear the music. You know what I mean? Film is like that. You know, and it's also I love the fact that it's like if you don't keep up with it, you don't know what's up. You know, it's going to be no good. I mean, the footage is going to come back no good. And it's sort of that element, you know, and that was kind of my thing was like, oh, I was really good at film and, you know, people trusted me. But then it was, you know, yeah, it just became a little funky.
No, I feel the same way. I shot as much film as I could in college. And I think part of the fun is not knowing exactly what you have. And I mean, to this day, like that's why I shoot all my, you know, personal projects for stills on film, just because it's a different process. It's a different way of thinking.
Yeah, and it's just that though. It is the process. It's just a different vibe and a approach and everything. And it's
Definitely.
And it's more difficult, but sometimes it's like using a manual Leica.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like you got to think about all these little things and that sort of craft work. You know, and it's also there's this, you know, sort of intimacy with film. You know, that you kind of have to know what you're up to, or else you're gonna crash and burn, you know, and it's sort of taking those opportunities.
Yeah, no, I think especially when I was first learning on digital, there was kind of this thought that, oh, you know, we can just get another shot, we can fix it in post. There's so much latitude that you can kind of do whatever you want. But I think I really learned the most about filmmaking when I was shooting on film, because it really forces you to consider every element. And I think,
yeah, like why is
know,
the camera here and
exactly.
not here? You know?
Even if it's just, you know, 3 inches over or something, it's something you really have to think about and consider. And I think once you really learn that process, I think it helps to kind of apply that to digital again,
Definitely.
right? And have that same level of care. So now I'm just kind of like preaching to the people in the audience, like, hey, you should shoot film. You'll learn better.
I think you will learn better.
Absolutely.
That's it. It's just a tool, you know, and yeah, I just think you
It forces you to learn.
It forces you to learn. It sort of, yeah, it forces you to make, because film is expensive. That's
Oh,
a big deal.
absolutely.
It's really expensive, you know. And so, yeah, to sort of have your ducks, you know, in a row and know what it is you're trying to do, you know,
Absolutely.
and then go after it. I think that's so key, and I think that kind of gets lost sometimes.
Very valuable. Yeah. So, at the time, so you're prepping for Billy's, you're kind of working towards this, you know, one of the first big features of your career. What are you inspired by at this time? What's like the context that you're working under?
Ooh, you mean like,
Like other big movies, other queer
Oh.
movies.
wow. Whoa, I'm terrible at this. I don't know. I kind of liked a lot of the early, you know, I loved a lot of the Spielberg films that sort of
Oh,
turned me
yeah, yeah.
on. You know, a lot of stuff that Alan Davio shot. You know, that sort of, yeah. There's that early Spielberg where things were very deliberate and contemplative as far as the shots and pre-production on every shot. I'm sort of a big fan of that. You know, I liked all those sort of. I really liked the original Star Trek series
Oh,
and
yeah.
the lighting. I mean, some of it was like meh, and some of it was like, it was like they were trying to paint sets with light. You know,
Absolutely.
and I really love the way, you know, especially some of the close-ups on that show looked, and so like the color and sort of that fearless use of color. I love, because color's free. You know, you don't pay extra
Right.
for it, right? You know, and I think just people
Yeah.
are afraid of color. And I think it looks so beautiful. The eye just goes right. You know, the human eye just is attracted to color, and sort of a more fearless use of color. You know?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Awesome. Yeah. So I think. So what about so since Billy's? What other kind of projects have you been working
A lot
on?
of made-for-TV movies, a lot of Lifetime movies, you know, things like that I wouldn't necessarily be like, yeah, I can't wait to do that. But it's, you know, people are like, well, why are you doing all these TV movies? And it's like, well, you know, because Spielberg hasn't called
pays,
me.
yeah.
You know, and you know, and I'd love to do a big budget movie that doesn't have anything to do with that, but no one's
Of
offering me a
course.
paying job to do that, you know. And kind of, you know, making a living and paying your bills is a big deal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's kind of the most important thing. And I think
Yeah.
most people, I think a lot of people forget that most people in the film industry are working on projects like that. That's, you know, where most of the work is. And there is, you know, a
Yeah.
highest percent of whatever, you know, people working on Spielberg and
Well,
everything. But
it's not called show, you know, it's called show business.
exactly.
There's
exactly.
a reason, you know, for that. You know, it's you know, and people think like, oh, film is so expensive. Like, yeah, but none of this stuff was ever meant for you to, you know, buy the film and rent the camera and do all this. This is
Right.
This, you get a producer, you raise money, and you know, and a lot of people are making a lot of digital films. And I think someone's gonna come after me for saying this, but they make a lot of digital films, but they don't do the pre-production part of it, which is go after a distribution company and say, here's our script, you know, would you pick this up? And they may say, oh, if you get so and so and so and so and so and so, like these, like here's some ideas for a female lead, here's ideas for a male lead. If you get, you know, one or two of these people, then we might be interested in giving you X dollars for it when it's done. You know, and
Right.
but instead, and with film, you had to do stuff like that because the upfront costs were so great. With digital, the upfront costs, you know, obviously don't need to be as much.
Barrier to entry is way lower.
Way
Yeah.
lower. But the problem is, you know, it's sort of like building a custom house for someone with a very specific taste, you know, and hoping to find that person who's willing to pay for that house when it's built. And it's like, you really kind of have to talk to a few people to say, well, what would you like to see in this house? You know, if we built this house, would you pay X dollars for it? You know, so it's that I see a lot of films that get made that look gorgeous, you know, and actually are pretty interesting, but you know, yeah, I think that's kind of decoupled, you know. And like I said, people think, oh, film's so expensive, film's so hard to do. But again, it was never meant for you to go out. That's what 16 millimeter, you know, was
Sure.
for. You know what I mean? Really, it's 35
I think
millimeter was never
there's
for.
different layers to it, right? Where I think nowadays it is so much more accessible with digital, and I do think that's absolutely a good thing.
Yeah.
But I also think there's a difference between, you know, making a short as sort of a learning experience as a way to get yourself out there versus, you know, a high school student deciding to make a feature. It's
Right.
there's a big kind of gap in between there, and I think there's a difference between using digital as a learning experience and having that low barrier to entry, making it accessible, versus that being the last step in your process. I think you have
Right.
to take it further.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to start off with, and also so many times, because I also teach adjunct at Virginia Commonwealth University,
yeah.
and you'll talk to students and they'll have a script, and you'll come back and say, well, what about this? And they'll say, oh yeah, a few people have said that. Well, that actually happened to me, and blah 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 blah. And you're like, wait a minute, you've gotten the same note from multiple people, and
you're
now
not
you're
going to change it,
and you're not changing it, and you're having to explain. So you're going to stop the movie, even though this actually happened to you, it still comes out of left field, right? And it's like,
Right.
I don't believe it, so the audience isn't going to believe it either, probably. Especially if you get the same note over and over again, maybe, reconsider.
Absolutely. I think that was the most important thing I learned in film school, was how to take criticism, how to work around it, how to develop a project rather than just sticking with your vision as it is at the very beginning.
Yeah, and that's also real life. In real life, it's like, it's very, the auteur idea of cinema is kind of like,
I mean, it's romantic, but it's not realistic all the time.
No, so many people in La La Land came out, and they were, so many of my friends who are my age, I'm pretty old, but like, were so pissed off at that movie because it's the message of that film is like, if you're good and if you try hard and you work hard and you come out to LA, you're going to succeed. You will find your way. And it's like, that is bullshit. I mean, you can
get by.
You can get by, but like the idea of like, it's really not true. It really isn't. You can be brilliant, you can be great, and you can do all those things. And if you don't meet the right people at the right time, it's not going to happen for you in a big way.
Right. And again, to be clear, you can make a career. It just might not be the glamorous career that everyone's dreaming of.
Exactly. And it's sort of like, so many schools, they teach so much screenwriting stuff. And it's kind of like, well, because it's easy to teach screenwriting because all you need is a laptop, but how many screenwriters do you know that are successful that make their living as screenwriters? But like, how many people also do you know who might make their living as an electrician or a grip or in the camera department or in post-production? There's a lot of jobs in those realms, and it's fine to have those jobs and at least know it's great to be on set. You know what I mean? Like I think that's just the learning curve that happens from actually being on a real professional union set or a well-run indie film or something like that. Is such a, like, you can talk about it until you're blue, and but like, you're there and you're seeing it done. I think that's
Yeah, but I think that's kind of one of the best things about filmmaking, is that every one of these jobs is an important collaborator, right? You need all of these people there. So maybe the dream is you want to be the auteur, screenwriter, director, cinematographer.
You should do that. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, you should work towards that, but also, like, we need a grip. We need a gaffer.
And oftentimes people do fall into those jobs or get into that part and think, oh, I'm going to do this, and then but then they're so exhausted from doing that work and the hours that you have to keep in order to do that work. It kind of drains you for your own creative projects on the side. But so it's not easy. I mean, this business is not easy. It's not like, oh, I'm gonna go be a dentist, and so you study to be a dentist, and you put out your shingle, and you can go and be a dentist anywhere. Whereas filmmaking is like, it's
a small industry.
It's a small industry, and there's so many people sort of coming out to and want to be a part of it. The attrition rate's pretty high, and even since COVID, I know a lot of people have
it's
been
a rough time for it.
It's a rough time right now. The industry is in the shitter. I mean. Like, I don't know what's going on. I mean, a friend of mine hasn't, she does a lot of commercial production, does production designer, and she's in Canada now, but I don't think she's worked on anything since, last year.
Yeah.
So it's
not to discourage anybody.
No, it's just a weird time.
It's worth working towards. It's just a difficult. I think it'll pass. But
yeah, it always does.
It always
comes
does.
in waves. It comes in waves.
Yeah, kind of looping back to. The topic we're kind of going
I'm
for.
Sorry. I'm just like,
listen, fascinating conversation, totally worthwhile. Little detour.
Yeah. Meanwhile, back at the point.
Yeah. So Pride Month, queer cinema history. Looking back to earlier in your career.
What about you? What films influenced you?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I remember in film school, I got to see. Poison, the very first Todd Haynes feature. And that one really kind of changed the way I thought about film. It was a very different, I mean, I was probably 19 when I saw this, so it wasn't really something I'd ever seen before. For anyone who hasn't seen it, you absolutely should. Todd Haynes is incredible. but it's kind of structured as 3 separate vignettes that are kind of intercut between each other. 3 completely, well, arguably unrelated stories. And that was something that really kind of blew me away at the time. It was thematically similar, tonally similar, but they were these totally separate stories with totally separate styles. Some of them are in color, some of them are in black and white. One of them's like a documentary, basically. It's a very odd way of shooting a movie. But as an ensemble, it really ties together in a fascinating way. So that one's really valuable to me personally. And again, as a piece of queer cinema history, it was the first time I'd ever seen, I mean, frankly, anything that graphically gay on screen before.
I know I've seen the film. I probably saw it back in the day, a
Oh,
long
yeah,
time.
this was early 90s.
Yeah, I just don't. Yeah, I'm terrible.
Fantastic movie for anyone who hasn't seen it, and worth rewatching.
Yeah, definitely.
And since then, I've been watching more and more Todd Haynes movies. I mean, how can you not? I mean, May, December this past year was unbelievable. And I just saw Carol for the first time, another landmark queer cinema.
Yeah, that's a beautiful and
gorgeous.
Ed Lachman, I think, shot that.
That sounds right. I would have to double check.
And that was like 16 millimeter, and he's the one who uses that. There's this big master zoom. It's a 16 to 110 Zeiss thingy that was designed to intercut with the master primes, and the lens is ridiculous. I mean, literally, of course, it has a handle built into it, and I can't even imagine
I've seen these. Yeah, some of these zooms get ridiculous.
And this was literally, you use a 6x6 matte box as a clip-on. I mean, it's like, you know what I mean? It's nuts, but it's gorgeous. And they used it in Poor Things.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
And that, I believe it was, I hope I'm not speaking out of turn. Someone's going to correct me. But I believe it was used on that too. And yeah, it's a really interesting. Yeah. Also, Zeiss won't service. It's like one of those deals where it's like, if you send it to Zeiss to have it serviced, they only will strip it completely down and rebuild it. They don't like fix it. They rebuild. So it's like, you know.
You have to hope.
And it was Airy Rental commissioned it to be built.
Wow. Okay, so this is like a very low quantity kind of.
Yeah, I think they probably made 20 of these things.
I haven't heard of this before. Yeah.
It's similar to Panavision built a lens called the Ultra Zoom back in the late 70s. It was a T19 20 to 120 zoom.
Wow.
It was redonkulous. It used like an 8x8 matte box, like special matte boxy thing, and you mounted the Panaflex to the lens. It was like a base plate on the thing. And DPs loved it, but like, you know, the crews hated it. It's one of those deals, like, once you went onto that thing, you were done. Like we're not switching
you're not
off.
swapping.
No,
Yeah.
you're going with that until lunch, you know.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think like you're talking about with 16 millimeter and all these, you know, incredible classic lenses, I think that really serves Carol in a really powerful way. It's for anyone who hasn't seen it, it's a period piece set, I believe, in the mid to late 50s, about this young woman who works in a department store falling in love with an older customer. And the way that movie is shot, both as a period piece and as sort of a romantic drama, I think that's, you know, kind of as we were talking about earlier, it's a project that is really served by film.
Yeah, and it also doesn't look like 16. You know what I mean? It 16 a lot of time. You know, that was the biggest thing back in the old school days, where, you know, when, you know, but the budget was low and you had to shoot 16, or you had to shoot on tape or something like that, and the sensors were so small, or the tubes were so small, and everything had that crazy depth of field, you know, and that sort of gave away the 16 millimeterness of it all. But that film, you know, he really does you know, there's certain scenes that do have great depth of field, and other scenes that are very shallow and have that intimacy, and I think he did a tremendous job.
Absolutely. And again, I think a lot of that comes down to the lens choice. You know, when you have a zoom with that much range that's that fast, you really can do whatever you want with the depth.
Yeah, and the minimum focus is startlingly good, and yeah, I mean, but it was also the same thing where, you know, they built Panavision, you know, learned their lesson, which was like, we built this giant heavy thing and nobody wants it, and then so 20 years later, Zeiss comes out and does this, you know, Airy, you know, is commissioned Zeiss to build this lens for the rental department, and it's the same basic thing. It's like a few people really think it's cool and love it, and everybody else is like, get this giant heavy thing, you know, out of here, you know. So and I've been I kind of subscribe to that. I kind of subscribe to, like, I don't care how heavy it is. You know, back in the day, it was like, you know, we would do. I had a small production company, and we would shoot commercials in 35 millimeter, where other companies
Yeah.
we were bidding against could only do 16, and that's because, well, we had Mitchell BNC reflexes, that cost us nothing. You know what I mean? And everybody else had to rent a 16 camera, so we could kind of give away the camera, and the rental
Right.
of that, and we would shoot on like short ends, and so we could do 35 for what other people could do 16 for.
So already at this time, you're already kind of taking advantage of older gear.
Yeah, and it's
which-
heavy, exactly. And the reason nobody wants that gear is because, well, it weighs, 124 pounds.
Sure.
But like when you're sitting and watching the commercial at home, no one knows that the camera weighed 124 pounds. And
Exactly.
and as long as the agency people are buying into you as a cinematographer, and the director's buying into you as a cinematographer, you say, oh, I want to use the blue lens, and they like your reel, and they know that the reel came off the blue lens. Well, then, why wouldn't you let me use my blue lens?
Absolutely. And I think, that's something people are still doing today, especially with, adapting vintage lenses to digital now.
Yeah, I have a Alexa XT, which I got a front from, what was the name of it? I can't remember the company that makes the lens mount. I think they're in Poland. I'm not sure. C7. Yeah,
C7.
C7
okay.
adapters, and I bought a BNCR mount for the Alexa, which you have to take all this stuff off, and I also had to machine it because it wouldn't take BNC lenses, which I had a set of BNC lenses from a Mitchell BNC camera, and so you could take the regular Baltars and stick it right on there, and
So for anyone who doesn't know, what is a BNC lens? When are they from? What changed?
Oh, well, BNC lenses were for the Mitchell BNC, which is the blimp newsreel camera, which is like the camera you see a lot in big production stills. A lot of people think that looking at the photos, you think it's a 70 millimeter camera, but the camera has to
No,
rack.
it's just too big.
It's too big, and the camera has to rack over so it's not reflex. So what happens is there's a handle on the back of the camera, you push this plunger, and inside the soundproof housing, the blimp, the camera slides over, the film moves out of the way behind the lens, and a ground glass and a viewing system moves in place behind the lens, and then you can see.
So you can monitor or shoot.
Or shoot. You can't look through the lens while you're rolling. That's the issue.
Gotcha.
But the lenses, of course, are non-retro focused, so they're sort of like Leica lenses. They're relatively simple lenses.
So essentially what this means is, on like a DSLR or a modern PL, there's a big gap between the back of the lens and the focal plane, right? So whether that's a digital sensor or the film itself. Nowadays, we're seeing this a lot with mirrorless cameras, right? So the back of the lens is much closer to the sensor.
There's no reason, there's nothing to keep room for, so you can make a lens. So
and this makes it much easier to design the lens.
Yes, and
basically,
much
is
less
the point.
costly. Exactly,
So
much less costly.
you're getting a cheaper, higher quality lens, but you're sacrificing being able to see through a reflex viewfinder.
Back in the day, back in the day, the Baltars were made by Bausch and Lomb, and they used titanium dioxide. They used their own glass, so it so it was a certain specific high index glass. And the cool thing about the regular Baltars is they're pretty much water white. They don't have. If you look at super Baltars, which were the lenses that came out in the 60s, the early 60s, for the Mitchell Mark II, which was Mitchell's idea of a all-purpose reflex 35 millimeter camera, which even was designed for handheld. If you've ever seen one of these cameras, and the idea of hand holding it is just like, wow, okay, good for you. There was no easy rig. You really would need an easy rig for this thing.
No, you need a crane.
You need a block and tackle or something, to hold the thing up. But
a whole team of people.
But yeah, the Super Baltos were designed around, to accommodate that spinning mirror, right?
Of course.
So you have these really big lenses that have all this glass and all this stuff and all these, air gaps. And they're all over the road. If you look at the quality of the Super Baltars, this one's green, this one's yellow, this one's, the performance is rando as can be. And the regular Baltars are really consistent. The color is consistent. They're not even like Cooks. Like Cooks, Speed Pancros can be all over the road color-wise. Some are thoriated, which they use is it thorium, like some sort of, thorium dye.
I personally have some thorium lenses. They're just straight up radioactive.
They're radioactive, and the radioactivity causes the glass to yellow. People think it's the balsam, it's stuff like that. It's like, no, there's a radioactive isotope in the glass.
It's decaying.
And it's causing glass to turn brown. And there's not much you can really do. I've heard people can bleach that, and there's certain techniques.
So my understanding is that if you blast it with UV light, or even if you just leave it out in the sun for a couple of weeks, it'll kind of
fade a little bit.
It'll clear up a bit. So for people at home, one of the most accessible lenses that has one of these thorium elements is the Super Takumar
Yes.
50 millimeter 1.4, which is one of my favorite lenses personally. They're like 150 bucks on eBay.
Or also there's the 80 millimeter for the Pentax 6.7.
Yes,
That lens has got one element that's really thoriated. It's hard to find. That's
Definitely,
not like
but
crazy
both
yellow.
made by Pentax.
Yeah, exactly. And Cook used thoriated glass, and none of these people, none of these companies at the time thought, in 50 years, people are still going to try to use this lens. Like, no, we're going to sell them something else.
Absolutely.
It'll be in a drawer. I mean, and also I think I think the first thoriated lenses were like the Aero Ektar lenses that were used for aerial reconnaissance stuff. And
that's right. Yeah.
And they use like 8x10, like these giant 8x10 cameras would just fire off.
So this is like military
stuff. Yeah, that just pointed straight down at the earth, and that kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's so fascinating about these vintage lenses is a lot of them, are using radioactive elements like thorium or using lead. Exactly.
There's lead.
So a lot of these, it's illegal to make them now.
Yes, like the C series lenses that Panavision has. Most of the C series lenses, the front elements are leaded glass or of that index, and so it was one of those deals where the C series lenses are really like if something happens to a front element,
it's gone.
It's gone because the cost of redesigning the front group, with a modern index glass, you may as well just start designing another lens. Which is what the G series of Panavision lenses are really supposed to replace the C series, because they're the G, people are, the G's are coming out and they're going to be like the best lens ever. And it's like, no, the idea was like
different.
So they're all the same front diameter, the same, they all have the same performance characteristic, and that's really what it was. Whereas you could spend a week prepping at Panavision just trying to find a set of lenses that matched remotely, because they were just never designed for that. And the G's were sort of an answer of like, oh, here's a set of lenses that's not as good as the E's and not as good as the Primos, but were, but are at least consistent, all the way through the range. You're not going to have to like hunt for, a good 35 or
absolutely
something like that.
So originally in your career, how did you start getting into, all of these older lenses, the more technical side of lenses and cameras?
I spent a lot of time, in Virginia where there was not much going on, and I was also running away from being gay, actually. I was running away, and one thing that you could sort of, while life is tumultuous and trying to figure yourself out is difficult, you can understand technical things.
Definitely.
Those are sort of grounded. They're not they're sort of immutable, and you can learn. So I ran very far away from my sexuality and dove very deeply into the technical end of filmmaking. And that was, and I was lucky that there were people there in Virginia and in North Carolina that dealt in, old equipment, and a lot of times I couldn't afford anything, so I would get like busted cameras and have to like, fix them, and stuff like that. So that was a great education.
Absolutely. No, that is fascinating. I mean, I think I had probably a similar experience in college where just I didn't have any money and I was completely ignoring everything but filmmaking.
Right. It's easy. It's great.
It's so fun. Everyone should try it and ignore your feelings.
Exactly. You just squish them down and get real technical,
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is this older gear is more accessible.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, especially starting out in film school or early on in their careers, are maybe ignoring these lenses and cameras especially, and just saying, I need the biggest, best new thing. I need to go rent a Arri 35, and I need to get some nice like Zeiss lenses or whatever it is. You don't really need any of that to make a good movie, right? And I would argue vintage lenses are more fun anyway.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, I think that there's, I think the like the older gear does like I said, it makes you more thoughtful. You
Absolutely.
kind of, you really do have to kind of, be about your business, and that's fun. I mean, it is
fun.
I miss the days of cinematography being like, where you're the operator, and it's you looking through that ground glass, and you're sort of the one who knows what it's going to turn out to be, and not everybody's like looking at the monitor and criticizing what they see on the monitor. Is like, oh, is it going to look like that, or what about that over in the background? You're like, dude, I'm not even done.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, it's not. We're not there yet. I'll let you know when you can, pass judgment. Just give me a finish. I'm
Get
not
the dailies.
done.
It'll be fine.
Well, just let me finish lighting. Let's just the lighting be finished, and then we can talk. Like we can criticize it, But just a minute,
Definitely. So you're clearly a big collector of
Too
both lenses
much.
and cameras.
Oh my God, yeah.
I think I'm
My ex can attest
well on
to
my
that.
way.
To like,
Yeah.
no more metal bits in the house. No more metal bits. You know.
Yeah, I think I'm well on my way to being the same. What are the most interesting things in your collection? What are you most excited about right now?
Ooh. Well, right now the super Baltars, the regular Baltars, because I've been using those a lot lately, and they're a lot of fun. Boy, oh boy, I'm trying to think. Just just a lot. I enjoy working. Oh, there's a guy named Nick Berg, who does a lot of sound restoration, and he's got a couple of these MGM blimps that MGM built
Wow,
internally,
yeah.
and they were thought to be sort of non-existent, and he found two of them. And they're super cool and gigantic. And
When would these be from?
oh God, the 30s. Like this is
Wow.
pre-Mitchell BNCs
Yeah.
and stuff like
So
that.
for anyone at home who doesn't know what a blimp is,
It's this giant soundproof housing you put the you'd shut the camera up in, and hopefully it'd be quiet enough to record sync dialogue. It was one step away from you like putting the camera in a telephone booth, basically. And putting a porthole
exactly.
in it,
This is like earliest days of sound. The cameras are loud as hell. You just need to put them in a different room and hope you
Yeah.
can't hear it.
I've also been doing some stuff with 2-color Technicolor.
Wow.
I have
yeah.
a camera that's a 2-color Technicolor camera. It's a single strip, basically. So there's a red frame. It's black and white film, and there's a red frame and a green frame, and there's a beam splitter that comes in. So each frame is 8 perforations, and I have to do it just to it.
Okay.
My mic's gonna go
So
weird,
you're-
but it's like the one image is they're toe to toe, basically. So one image is like this, one image is like that, and it goes through the beam splitter and gets busted up into the red and green. And then we had an opportunity with Warner Post. They scanned it on, I think, the Northlight scanner, and recomposited the image, and it's shocking because you can almost see like the young woman we had stand in. She had like red hair and blue eyes, and you can kind of see the blue eyes, even though blue's not a color. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's only red and green, so you can kind of get this teal, and it's the only Technicolor that you can reproduce because everything else required special film, and this just required black and white film. And the cameras were like really, sounded like a thrashing machine, and but they're pretty dope. I mean,
I've never heard of that. Everything I've heard is like, the only way to get color out of black and white film is a trichrome. You need 3 colors to match human
to really
vision,
get to get good color. But to
good
get
color.
like
Yeah,
neat,
yeah.
interesting color.
I would love to see that. Yeah, that sounds amazing.
Maybe we'll put some clips up or some frames
Definitely.
of the test that we did. It looks really cool. We were talking about doing it with like there's no way to easily put a motor on the camera, so you have to hand crank the camera,
Yeah.
and it doesn't really run, really wants to crank at 16 frames and trying to crank it up to 24 frames. So imagine it's like VistaVision. So you got like 8 perf, thing, and
it's just flying through film.
it's flying, and like I said, it sounds like a thrashing machine. It's like bam, 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 bam.
Well,
bam.
luckily you have the blimp, so.
Yeah, and they had blimps for these things, and I mean, I've never seen one like. I've seen like weird photos of them being used. You know what I mean? Because there's these really like, they're giant rectangular boxes.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I don't think there's more than. I know of 6 of these cameras that still exist.
Wow.
The gentleman who I think Photocam has one, the ASC has one, the Smithsonian has one, Eastman Eastman.
Just throw the Smithsonian in there.
Yeah, the Smithsonian and Eastman House has one, and I think that's it.
Wow.
And I have number 10, and I think it's number 28 or number 26. Only number 10 is missing some pieces. But anyway, yeah, it's super.
That is so cool.
It's such a pain in the ass, but it looks so cool. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's the thing about all this old Technicolor stuff. Even when it is splitting 3 ways, it's extremely expensive and extremely complicated. It's I've heard people. I was just talking to a friend about this the other day. Like, you couldn't shoot The Wizard of Oz the same way today. Those cameras don't exist anymore. The workflow doesn't exist anymore. It just can't happen.
Yeah, you'd have to get the film. There was like special films that you needed that Kodak made. There's matrixy films. It's a whole world of, and the machine, like the processing machine. You go down to, I think it's a Gold's Gym now. on Beverly, and I can't remember what the side streets are.
Uh-huh.
And it was, you had this giant Technicolor camera, and on the other end of it, you had a building that was like half a block long that it
Yeah.
took to handle the negative. You know what I mean? So it's like, yes, it's this relatively small thing over here, but the back end, is this
Wow.
giant building, full of, yeah, and it's all like fire retardant rooms because it was a lot of it in the
Of
early days
course.
were nitrate. They got rid of nitrate pretty quick.
Thank God.
Yeah, yeah, not good. Yeah, but it was pretty cool.
Wow. Yeah, that's fascinating. And now we can all just, shoot color on our phones.
Oh, I know, it's like amazing. I mean, yeah,
Night and day.
night and day.
Yeah. That's fascinating. I love hearing about all this. Every time I talk to you, it's like some crazy shit I've never heard of.
That's my goal.
Absolutely. So what's like the dream? Like, what would be something you've hunted for ages? If you could
Ooh.
find it today, what would change your life? With coolest thing possible to get?
Ooh, I don't know. Maybe I was a big VistaVision fan, and
Ooh,
I
yeah.
did get to own a big elephant ear VistaVision camera that I ended up
Yeah.
selling. And that was a night. I mean, it's a really cool format, but the cameras were a nightmare to use. If you ever see the Mitchell VistaVision camera, the viewfinder is on top of the camera. So in order to get like a normal height close up, like the camera, you're having to stand on like two apple boxes to get your face up to the
Yeah.
viewfinder. And the viewfinder wasn't like some special viewfinder. They just took a regular old Mitchell viewfinder and put a much bigger ground glass behind it, and it's just dim and dark, and you're hunched over this thing, and
Yeah.
to put your face in it to like rack it over, you have to jam your head sideways between the magazines and the motor housing. You know what I mean? And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, it's a torture device.
I mean, cinematographer is not important. He can put up with
Yeah,
it, right?
well, the operator will have to deal with it. The DP is
Sure,
going to be
sure,
down
sure.
here, pointing, and
Sitting in the chair.
Yeah, the operator's going to
okay.
be up on the rafters trying to look through the viewfinder.
Again, so for anyone who doesn't know what VistaVision is, basically it's using the same 35 millimeter film strip, but instead of running vertically, we're running horizontally, so we're getting an even bigger frame.
It makes me mad every time when people call 8 perf horizontal, they call it full frame now, and I'm gonna sound like a crotchety old man, and I'm like, that's not full frame. You know what I mean? Full frame is 4 perf, not 8 perf. The 8 perf thing was a development in Germany by Leica, to take motion picture film and put it in a still camera. They didn't take still film and put it in a movie camera.
Exactly. I think a lot of people forget that stills cameras were using motion picture film originally. It wasn't the
Yeah.
other way around. I think a lot of people, like, it is, again, so for people who don't know, the film you use in a 35 millimeter stills camera, like was popular for, a century, is the exact same film format used in a Super 35 camera
Yeah.
that you would see on a film set. But a lot of people don't know movie cameras came first.
Movie cameras came first, and it was also because in Germany at the time, their economy was in the shitter, and they were looking for inexpensive ways to take photographs. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah,
part of
yeah.
how it worked.
I mean, honestly revolutionary at the time, but, back then you would have been shooting 8x10, 4x5
Right,
large
exactly.
format. You have these big cameras with the bellows. So
Yeah.
coming out with a camera that you could,
It was like
just
miniature.
hold in one hand.
Yeah, exactly. It was like the
Um,
Super 8 of its day. Maybe,
Absolutely. Of course, film grain was a little different back
Yeah.
then. So
And it was black and white.
Of
and,
course, yeah.
all it was.
a lot slower.
Yeah, yeah. What were we just talking about? My brain is slipping away.
VistaVision.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah. I just resent them calling it full frame because it's like, it's not
Yeah.
full frame. That's VistaVision.
It's kind of looping back. I think really what's to blame is the kind of DSLR-ification
Yes,
of
yeah.
cinematography, which, again, revolutionary, very
Yeah,
important.
definitely.
But maybe the terminology got a little
The term,
backwards.
yeah, and also it's it's not exactly the same film because the film that's the perfs are different, a little bit different. There's Kodak standard perf. Most of your still photographic materials will have Kodak standard perf, and everything else would be Bell and Howell perf, and you would also end up with like. You would also the pitch is different. You know what I mean? Between that was all like from a that was sort of I'm trying to organize my dead brain. Oh crud! This is where a good edit would happen.
Yeah, cut here, we'll loop
We'll
back.
loop it back. Yeah. Oh, crud! What were we just? Oh, yeah. The what happened was like a lot of like old school cameras. They were all you. Well, now I'm dying. I'm just dying because I'm not now. It's got.
Do we
this-
want to reset?
I know.
Yeah.
I got the bad feedback loop, and now I'm just like.
Okay, we can. I got more questions.
Oh, good. Thank God. Okay.
So do you do a lot of stills work, or are you mostly cinematography only?
Mostly cinematography only. Yeah. No one really pays me to take. No one's ever paid me to take a still photograph. They pay
Sure.
me- yeah. No.
Okay.
What about you? Do you do still photography also?
Mostly on the side.
Mhm.
I think it's kind of fun as a cinematographer. Stills can be kind of it's more of a
Yes.
hobby. It's practice. you
Yeah,
know?
exact composition. I love the idea of like just handing someone a still camera with a 50mm lens and just do photo essays.
crazy.
With just
Yeah.
just just force yourself to compose within that, not
Mhm.
changing focal lengths, not and also even just trying to go around with like no exposure meter
Absolutely.
and learn to sort of guess at what it's going to be and all that.
I personally, I really enjoy. Like I always have 2 or 3 cameras on me at any time. Just like little point and shoots. Lately, I've been carrying around my Game Boy camera.
Oh yeah, that looked really cool.
Yeah. We were just talking about this before the stream. I've had this Game Boy camera since I was probably 5 years old, and I just recently, maybe in the past year, I bought a little device. So originally, the Game Boy camera could only export photos to a receipt printer that was sold as part of the Game Boy.
You mean like a receipt printer, like a CVS, like
Yeah, like it's printing on thermal
paper?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
So it had this proprietary link cable, and it would very slowly transfer these 120 by 128 pixel images with 8 tones of grayscale.
Awesome.
And it would burn them onto
Smooth.
these receipt paper, and you could print them out. But thanks to modern technology, I found this guy online who's making custom circuit boards that basically dupe the Game Boy printer. So the Game Boy thinks it's printing out, but really it's just saving to an SD card.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
So it's a very slow, convoluted process.
Mhm.
But it
We
means I
love
can
a convoluted
export
process.
Exactly.
I love a convoluted process.
Now I can finally get digital files from my digital camera.
Right. And that's
So
D
that-
with a small D.
Absolutely. So that's a fun one I've been carrying around lately. And then I always have for stills, I love to shoot on film still.
There's such a weird look to like even just like black and white still photography.
Yeah,
It's just-
absolutely.
there's people we can emulate the grain. We could just suck the color out in post, and it's like no, it doesn't.
It's
look
not quite the same.
No.
Yeah. So I typically my go-to is always stills Tri-X pushed at least one stop. I love the grain. I love the grit. I want the contrast. If I wanted it to look soft, if I wanted post it, I'd shoot digital.
Yeah.
But I want it to be a little funky. Yeah. So I always like to have cameras on me. I think it's practice for cinematography. I think it's a good way to
Yeah.
learn about light. I think especially just like finding things out in the worlds that you like to look at.
I've shot a bunch of black and white lately with this Kentamir stock, which is like I think it's supposed to be like rejected Ilford HP5.
I've heard of this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of inconsistent, but the result is it's such a interesting gritty graininess
Yeah.
to it. I'm really kind of falling in love with it again. I used to poo-poo Leicas. I used to like, that's so expensive, it's bullshit. What are you gonna get out of that? And it kind of forces you to like again use these cameras, because they're not reflex and all that. You don't get the accurate depth of field. You don't get certain things. So you kind of have to paint with very broad strokes, very bold, compositions and stuff like that to really get it to play out. And it's fun.
That's something I really love about shooting film is you don't know what you're getting, and that's more fun.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. It's always even back in the film days. It was always like I'm trying to say, has there ever been a time when something got like totally effed up? And there was a time where we did do. We were buying recans, and they gave us basically the wrong film stock and the wrong can. So we shot it thinking it was like
How are we doing on time?
oh.
11:58.
Oh, we've been going for an hour.
Oh, we should
We
stop.
gotta wrap up.
So sorry. People are like they're like unconscious.
We have 2 viewers left, and they're
I
asleep
know,
in front of their
sorry.
computer. Well, this has been a
This has
fascinating
been a hoot.
conversation.
I hope it's
Yeah.
not bored the crap out of people because I've really gone off on rabbit. I personally
We've just been going. Yeah, usually I like to check in and like, oh yeah, if we have any new viewers, we just went.
So hopefully,
Yeah,
someone
so for
found this
anyone who wasn't
interesting.
here at the beginning, I'm B here at Atlas. This is our weekly Tuesday telecast.
I'm
I've
Mark
been
Mervis.
speaking with Mark Mervis here, cinematographer. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. I was kind of trepidatious and worried, like, oh my God, people are going to be watching. Ah.
Yeah, no, amazing conversation. Yeah, we're just wrapping up here. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. We have another stream starting probably in the next 10 minutes with Explosive Expert.
Oh, cool. Oh, that's going to be way more interesting.
Listen, more interesting to some people. I think this
Okay.
was much more interesting, but we'll see. So yeah, we'll be back in a couple minutes with that second stream of the day. Mark, thank you so much for
Thank
coming
you.
on.
I had a great
Oh,
time.
yes, and we also have we're going to be at Cinegear this week. Come check out our booth. Cinegear in LA. We're at the Warner Bros. Lot this year, which is exciting.
Yeah.
I haven't been inside the lot before.
Oh, it's swank. Warner Bros.
yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
You got the lenses that filmed James Dean on Rebel Without a Cause.
Oh yeah.
Oh, cool. Oh, the scopes.
We're bringing a bunch of cool old stuff, including, like Dan was just saying, the lenses used on Rebel Without a Cause at our booth. So come check them out. Yeah, it'll be a fun show.
Awesome. I'll be there.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll be back in a couple minutes with the next stream.